Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, Goody. Hopefully, Hall will be joining us here momentarily throughout the podcast. I know he's taking care of the baby today. But the title of today's episode is The Fireworks Show. And to be able to help us talk about Ian Rappaport's reporting and to kind of talk about the coordinator search and the NFL draft of free agency, good friend of this show from Monumental Sports Network, Mr. Mitch Tischler. Thank you for joining us, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, bud?
I can't complain. It's another beautiful day. Was able to wake up and go to work today, and so I'm glad that I'm just here being able to talk to you, Mitch and Goody, of course, and to talk about our beloved Washington Commanders and the excitement that they bring. And speaking of, Ian Rappaport reported that he expects fireworks from Washington this season with Adam Peters with how much cap space they have. Do you expect the same thing? Is that what you're kind of hearing and feeling? And what could that possibly entail?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to see a huge change. I mean, there's 30 free agents. There's probably eight starting positions that need filling on defense, and maybe not fully eight, but it's certainly a number of guys on the defensive side of the ball. They've got $70+ million to spend. I expect that they're going to go out there and spend it and make a splash. I mean, this front office talked about when they came in, wanting to build for the long term. And after, 2024, when they made it all the way to the NFC Championship, I understand why they took the approach of the 2025 season and did a lot of the short-term signings similar to what they did the previous season. Obviously, it didn't work out. They ended up firing both their coordinators. It's time to recalibrate things, and I think they need to make a number of signings, but I think it's the type of signings that I think is going to be most important, because as much as there are some, names of big guys that are out there and players who have done that but are a little bit older, I don't want to see them invest big time dollars in short-term contracts. I want to see them go after, some younger players that they think can help them for a few years, and honestly just kind of put it all out on the table and not kind of, tiptoe into this thing. I thought last year they did too much of the hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out with building for the long term. It's time to commit to that, spend some money, and go the right direction.
Is there anybody that comes to mind when you think about wanting to offer bigger contracts for not just short term, but long term as well in free agency?
I mean, I think you have to start off at the tight end position. I think that you have to give a real hard look at both Isaiah Likely and Kyle Pitts and see, who in that group you think makes sense. And I think at that point you need to be shopping at the top of the market for a pass catching tight end that can help you out. Unfortunately, I think the two guys they have under contract that are going to play mostly aren't that player. And I think you have to look at defensive end. And to me, that starts with Trey Hendrickson. It was somebody that I wanted them to discuss last offseason, certainly as they got into training camp and Trey was having his issues with the Bengals and what they were doing, and kind of go that direction. I know wide receiver is certainly a place of need. I don't think there's that top end talent that's really out there, and that's not to say Tyreek Hill couldn't be that player, but for example, he's somebody that I don't want the Commanders to really entertain too hardly, unless it's a prove it type deal, which similarly would go for a guy like Brandon Ayuk as well. Yeah. So I think that, to me, I think there are a couple positions in this free agency group that have, real high upside. And to me, I want them to be shopping at the top of those lists.
Do you think that trading for a wide receiver is out of question?
Yes. Yes, I do think I any trade that you're going to make at this point, you're going to have to give up draft capital. Quite frankly, this team doesn't have enough draft capital now. Do I love Max Crosby? Do I think Max Crosby would look awesome in the burgundy and gold and fit everything that this team wants? Absolutely. But do I want to give up the capital that's going to take to go get him?
Yeah.
No, because that would, despite him being a little bit younger of a player, you're affecting so much of the long-term growth by giving up those draft picks. We already saw them do that with Laramie Tunsil, and while Laramie Tunsil worked out, I think you need to start building up the depth of this roster, because quite frankly, 1 to 53. I don't know that this roster is remarkably better than the roster that they took over 2 years ago, and that's kind of damning.
Very. Sorry, Goody. That was a pretty long couple questions I had for Mitch. Sorry to hog him up. Do you have a question for him?
No worries, no worries. It's good stuff always. So I guess kind of going towards knowing what has to happen in this free agency, this offseason in general. If you are the chef in the kitchen and you are to prepare a appetizer, a entree, a dessert, and a beverage of choice in terms of free off-season acquisitions, how would you prepare that meal?
I'm going light on the appetizer. I'm going with a full T-bone for
There we
dinner, a
go.
nice tiramisu for dessert, and a high-end bourbon for the drink.
I
I
need to
know. I
come
mean,
have dinner at Mitch's house. That sounds awesome.
I wish Monumental took care of me that way. But no, to me, I look at it as, I think, I want appetizer style. I want guys who, can maybe be a stepping stone type player. And for me, that I'm looking at running back in that world. I love, what Bill Merritt did last year. I think he has a pretty high upside, but I do also think he needs time to grow, and they need to bring in somebody, in the Chris Rodriguez type role, and maybe that's Chris Rodriguez coming back again. I also want to see them bring in somebody in that Austin Eckler role, somebody who's a little bit more of a pass catcher. We didn't see enough of that from Bill last year, so I think in that mind, that's where I'm going with it. When you talk about a main course, I think you got to talk about the best player in free agency, and I don't know exactly who that is. I would certainly, the players that I brought up earlier are among the tops at those in that category, but I want to see them. I don't want to say make a big splash because that is a kind of a negative connotation, but I want to see them take a big swing, and whoever their guy is that they deemed as, hey, this guy can help us for the next 2, 3, 4 years. I want to see them not not take a step foot into 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing. I want to see them go all in and get the guy that they're looking for. And dessert wise, I'm looking for a finisher. I'm looking for added bonuses in the pass rush game, or the getting out to the quarterback type game. We've seen the types of defenses that Durante Jones has worked under, and I think we can reasonably assume that this Commanders defense, knock on wood, knock on everything holy, is going to look something similar to that, where they're going to play the run through the pass and get after the quarterback. I know there's a lot of consternation about secondary and corner and whatnot, but I do think that getting a big pass rush and getting after the quarterback helps those guys so much. I think the defense has been far too passive the past 2 years under Dan Quinn, and I want to see them, dictate instead of being dictated to. And as far as a drink goes, I'm looking for my favorite thing that I'm looking for something that's just gonna, make the meal all that much better. Be that, added je ne sais quoi, and maybe that's an athletic middle linebacker who can help
Spring
out
training.
alongside Jordan McGee and play in that defense. And I don't expect him to go out and have the tackle numbers that Bobby Wagner has put up in his career. I don't expect him to go and be London Fletcher, but I want someone that can run with a tight end. I want someone who can cover a running back out of the backfield, who can use a little bit of that speed and athleticism both in coverage and then also as an added bonus when they bring extra rushers to the quarterback.
My
I
man.
like it.
My man, Mitch. Always appreciate it. I have a two-parter for you. I want to.
I just got done with a four-parter. No, I'm
But
kidding. Go for it.
we
Go
only
for
have
it.
a limited amount of time to talk to you, so I got to cram as much as I possibly can. In regard, you kind of talked about Durante Jones already, and I know that you're under the belief that it's going to be implemented a lot like what he had in Minnesota, even though his wide variety of background with different defenses coming in here. And we kind of talked about the chef aspect, right, of what you're cooking up at home. But one could argue, it does Washington have the pieces to be able to implement what he did in Minnesota? But I'd also be willing to say, like, this is probably the perfect defense given that you don't have a top tier edge rusher. So it's probably better that you rush with the accumulative, right? Like that with everybody instead of just depending on one or front four. So what do you expect with Durante Jones in detail in terms of defense? Do you think that he's going to change it up a little bit based on what we have, or do you expect that to be implemented?
I think certainly in the short term, he's going to have to run with what they have. But let's also say the defense could and should look immensely different next year in terms of player personnel. I think the biggest thing is you look at, last offseason, and most of the players that they brought in on the defensive side of the ball were to help support stopping the run because we saw the run get gashed in 2024.
Yeah.
I don't know that players like Dietrich Wise really have a fit in Durante and Durante's system and what Durante is going to want to do. I think the same could be said for a lot of guys that are there. You know, for a lot of guys that are there. So I think you're going to see them line up. They're going to line up a lot of different ways, but I think you're going to see a base 3-4. I think you're going to see more athleticism on the field, more speed. And I think I think that counteracts a lot of the different guys that this team has. I think when you look at Frankie Louvu and his success in 2024, I think his athleticism was a big part of that, and it was predicated on his ability to blitz from a linebacker position, not from having his hand in the dirt, which is just something that he wasn't able to do last year, and quite frankly, is asking a lot of a guy who's not big enough to bull rush a offensive tackle, and doesn't have the pass rushing moves and speed or short spurt speed to beat those guys around the edge. And so all of a sudden, you're lining up a guy who did a good job getting out to the quarterback in 24 in an unfamiliar position in 25. I think a guy like Frankie Louvu could have a lot of success in a Durante Jones defense. And I think when you look at the types of middle of the field players that they're going to bring in, and I mean linebackers and corners, linebackers and safeties, I think you're going to see guys who, different size for the safeties, but similar play style to Frankie Louvu. And quite frankly, I love it because I want guys that are flying by the seat of their pants and getting after the football and, running around like chickens with their heads cut off and playing hard and fast.
And so my second part to this being, so you're under the same mindset that I am, that Washington is actually well prepared in terms of personnel to be able to do Durante Jones's defense from Minnesota. And off of that,
No, not right now, but hopefully in 3 months when they're done with free agency and the draft, we'll be saying that.
okay,
There's a lot of talk about what they're going to do at 7 in the draft, and quite frankly, edge rusher makes the most sense. But I could see a situation where this team targets a bunch of defensive ends in free agency and edge rushers and guys who can get us to the quarterback, linebackers too, and then they maybe go Carnell Tate at 7 and give Terry the help that a secondary receiver needs. And I don't know that's going to happen, but I'm starting to warm up way more to that idea than I was maybe 2 or 3 months ago when I was screaming at the top of my lungs that if it wasn't a edge rusher, then they made a mistake. But they have a ton of money to spend. They need to spend it wisely, smartly, professionally. But you could see a world where they stock up in free agency on defense and rely on upgrading the offense through the draft. Either way, I think you see a combination of that. There's going to be a different, even if a guy like Debo comes back, I think you need somebody with speed to add to this receiving core, because to me, that's the biggest issue with having Terry and Debo is that they don't really complement each other that well, because Terry doesn't really help Debo with all the underneath and different things that Debo does. Debo doesn't help Terry, over the top. And so teams are able to kind of, game plan pretty easily for that kind of receiving duo. So they need to bring in more speed at receiver. I've been saying it for a while. De'Ami Brown's going to be back on the market. You're going to be able to get him for pennies on the dollar. We've seen what he could do here. I'm not saying that he's the answer as your everyday number 2 receiver, but he's somebody that I think you could add to this offense that could add a whole lot to what they do. I don't know that the defense is set right now to do what Durante Jones wants to do, but I do think that they have the opportunity to build this defense in his view, and he's able to bring in guys that do what he wants to do.
my man, we're under the same mindset. We're under the same mind. It was more so with like Mikey and Frankie Louvu that would benefit, right?
And
So,
Jordan McGee has been the biggest name that prior to last season during training camp. JP was giving me a hard time on our Beltway Football Pod about how much I wanted to see Jordan McGee and how much growth I thought that we could get out of him. And he didn't start seeing the field in meaningful numbers until much later in the season. I think he's a starting caliber middle linebacker waiting to happen, and I'm excited for him to get unleashed, hopefully under Durante.
I appreciate it, Mitch. Do you have a question, Goody?
Yeah, something quick. So we have about 32 pending free agents coming up. Pressway was one of them, and I believe he was re-signed. So the split between the offense and defense is literally about down the middle, 16 apiece, free agent wise. So which side of the ball do you think would have more retention? How many players do you think will be coming back more on the offense or defense?
Oh, 100% offense. I think you can look at the offense and hopefully the only two real places that you have to add to are, wide receiver two and tight end. I don't know what's going to happen at left guard, which is obviously a question with Chris Paul. To me, I've been saying I think Chris Paul might end up in the De'Ami Brown world last year, where a team kind of goes and overpays for him because of his production this season. And that's where having Brandon Coleman, I think, is such a bonus for this team because he can step in and play, assuming he's able to find a way to be healthy. But I think the starting lineup is going to look, pretty familiar next year on offense. On defense, I don't know how many of those guys are going to, I don't know how many of the week one starters last year are going to be the week one starters next year. And to me, that's exciting because, that defense was historically bad and, needs to be overhauled, to a man.
My man. Now, Mitch, my other question for you. We talked about Durante Jones, and on defense, want to talk a little bit about David Blau. Look, Durante, getting the defensive coordinator took some time, right? David Blau was much quicker. Obviously, him being in the building made it much easier, and there was reports that Minnesota and not Minnesota. Who else was really
Detroit.
Detroit? That's what it was coveting his what he could offer. Do you think that they did the process the right way? And ultimately, how confident are you in David Blau being the first time OC, being able to implement with Jaden and get this offense up and running?
I'm on board with Blau. You know, it's not this front office group, it's not this ownership group, but obviously as fans and media members, we've seen so many young minds leave here and go be successful elsewhere. Just save the graphic, and every damn Commanders fan knows exactly,
Yeah.
what you're talking about. So to me, I like giving him a chance. I mean, there's not really a bunch of other names out there that I was overly excited about. Mike McDaniels might have been one of them, but if Mike McDaniels and Dan Quinn have a very tight relationship. They talked about it all week when they were
In Spain.
when we were in Spain and whatnot. So clearly DQ didn't want to go that direction. And the other little piece of info that I kind of took away from the coordinator's press conferences was I asked Blau about what are going to be some of the challenges that Jaden has to overcome, being that he's played kind of pistol and shotgun his whole college and pro career, and now going under center. And Blau talked about the last couple weeks of the season when Jaden wasn't playing. That was one of the things that they were working on. Kind of gives you a little hint that maybe they had a pretty good idea that this was a move that they wanted to make. So I think Blau is I like having Blau there, and part of having Blau there that makes me happy is that you have Anthony Lynn. You have some veteran guys on that offensive staff who can help him, figure out the waters of what he's going to be going through for the first time. But ultimately, it's Cliff's offense obviously didn't work the way that everyone wanted last season, and I think part of the injury issues were exposing Jaden too much. But the basics of that offense were good. He just was overly aggressive in his play calling. So I think if Blau is able to kind of take some of those basics and combine it with a little more traditional NFL offensive play calling, you can see a good offense. And quite frankly, there's going to be pressure on both he and Durante, but for me, on him more, because this is a big year for Jaden. It's a big year for Dan Quinn. By default, that makes it a big year for David Blau, for him to help put these guys in a good position to go back to having a top 5, top 10 offense.
My man. And now we are joined by our other co-host, Mr. Michael Hall. Do you have a question for Mitch before I wrap up?
Without knowing what's been asked, I'm just gonna go with. You talked about Durante Jones, and he mentioned a couple players during his press conference that he thinks that are young and athletic and have some potential or not. But who's a guy that just based off of what you might think the scheme he might run with his defense and what he might do. Who's a guy on the defense you think that might benefit the most from the new defensive changeup?
Yeah, I mean, I think Frankie Louvu is definitely one of them. We talked about him a little bit already, so I won't go in depth there. But I'll go with the young corners, so with Sainer still and Amos. I think the fact that we're going to see Durante hopefully get after the quarterback more aggressively will allow those guys to play a little bit more aggressive on the outside and not have to cover for as long. And I think that, for all the talk of turnovers and ball is life and all that BS that we heard last year about it, I think that it didn't happen. And I think that the more they get to the quarterback, the more they're going to be able to make that happen. I think, the ball is life kind of mantra overtook, some fundamentals on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's part of the reason we saw such poor tackling all season long.
Yep.
So I think kind of across the board, you're going to see a defense that's more committed to fundamentals. And quite frankly, I like Durante Jones talking about, when I meet these players, when I get to know them, I want to find out how they learn best. Is it through video? Is it through iPads? Is it through on-field demos? Is it through PDFs? Whatever it may be. Because to me, one of the big issues the first 2 years under Quinn and under Witt was that clearly what they were trying to teach these guys wasn't getting through. And I think you saw that with all the pre-snap miscommunication that was happening, all the discussion that was happening as the ball was getting snapped. And quite frankly, year one, you give them a little bit of a pass because, hey, the first year they're trying to figure stuff out. But the fact that they went into year two and it didn't get even remotely better is a pretty damning fact about, the way that their teaching style and the way that they went about things. So to me, I mean, I would say secondary as a whole, but specifically, I think you're going to see Amos, Sainer still, and corner X have more opportunities to make plays on the ball because this defense is going to be getting after the quarterback, sending extra bodies, forcing them to make quick decisions and hopefully bad decisions.
My man. And now to wrap this up, Mitch, only a couple more questions for you. I had one that was very similar, but Kim Parkhorst on Twitter asked, what about another running back? I know you talked about Chris Rodriguez, and you kind of talked about some fits that you would want to see Washington go after. Is there anybody in mind that you're thinking of? Would you rather go through the draft, or free agency is where you really want to use to get running backs?
Free agency, 100% for running backs. I think that, Bill kind of fits your quota of young running back that is going to be learning and growing. And I don't want to put too much onus on him to tote the football 25 times a game, unless he goes out there and, proves that, that's something that he can do. I know folks love Jeremiah Love, and, folks are getting excited about what he can do in the NFL, and maybe he'll be great. I'm not entirely sure what he's going to be, but I also think that, that would be a luxury style pick for this team. And this is not a team that's in the business of making luxury picks. There's still, real, solidified holes in this roster that they need to fill. And, you can see Bill's upside, and you can see hopefully what you want Bill to turn into if he continues to grow, as we saw from week 1 to week 18, 17 last year. But it's something that you can lay on Bill's shoulders for the majority of it, right, through this season. And if this team comes together the way that I think we all hope that it comes together, there's going to be another stud running back next year. There's going to be a stud running back in 2 years. Maybe somebody hits the free agent market, whatever it may be. But to me, you need a power runner. You need an in between the tackles runner for goal line, short yardage, and you need a pass catcher. And who those guys end up being, I think is to me, your pass catcher has to be good in pass pro. That's number one before you talk about the athleticism in the hands, and all the things they can do. And then that's obviously secondary. But it's hard to I don't want to start naming random players, because there's a long list of them. And I think when you talk about filling running back position, I think the money needs to go to tight end, needs to go to wide receiver, and then thirdly running back.
Yeah, my man. And now our next question / segment is gun to your head. So you're at pick 7. All right, this is
Jesus, I'm making dinners, and now a gun's to my head.
Yeah, I'm
all
sorry.
Right.
This is
I see you guys.
It's a Sopranos episode all over again.
Oh, good.
So let's say, gun to your head, you have to make a decision here at 7. And look, this is most likely not going to happen, but hypothetically, if Washington, you're on the board at 7, you have Arvil Reese, you have David Bain, and you have Reuben Bain, and then you have David Bailey. What are you picking?
Sonny Styles is off the board.
Yes.
Ruben Bain.
Reuben Bain, why?
I think he's shown the most out of all the non-Sonny Styles edge rushers that are going to be there around there. I think he's a guy that can step in and play right away. I know there's concerns about arm length and all those different things, but we've seen him, take over football games in college, and that's not something that you see every team have. And to me, defensively, safety, offensively, running back are two positions that you can find answers to a lot of different ways. To get an elite edge rusher is something that those guys don't end up in free agency. Those guys don't end up getting traded very often. So to me, that if you want to find that guy, I think you got to draft him.
My man. Last question I have for you. It's another gun to your head kind of thing, but this is a future kind of mindset. Let's just say Washington in 2026, they do very well, especially offensively. And David Blau is just like the Sean McVay that we had here, starts getting head coaching inquiries. What do you do in that situation? Do you make the decision with Dan Quinn and then appoint David Blau, or are you, especially if the team is doing well, are you okay with David Blau leaving?
It's a hell of a hypothetical, and I kind of hate it just because I think you can look at it similarly. Cliff Kingsbury came in, and all the people who yelled about defensive versus offensive head coaches, Cliff came in and took a terrible offense, and granted they added Jaden Daniels to it to be a top 5 offense. Dude didn't take head coaching interviews. I don't know that he really had that many out there.
Right.
David Blau and part of the reason I like the David Blau hire is that he has room to grow and he has room to breathe. I don't think that if he has a great season, he's going to immediately start getting head coaching jobs or head coaching offers. And as a young guy who just came from being an assistant QB's coach, offensive coordinator, if you really have to do something to help him out, you make him assistant head coach as well. You add a title to his name, you give him a couple extra bucks to, make him feel better about himself. But ultimately, that's why to me, the biggest positive is that if he is great, I don't think that he's going to leave right away. And quite frankly, if he's great and this offense goes to be the number, for him to start getting head coaching opportunities, that offense is going to have to be top 3, top 5 in the NFL. If the offense is back to top 3, top 5 in the NFL, I'm going to be pretty damn happy with what happens this season, because to me that means that this team is going to have similar success to what they did 2 years ago.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one to answer. But we've seen crazier stuff happen. But
the thing is, like, there's any coach anywhere could leave at any time. Like whoever you hire. That's why I didn't love the Mike McDaniels talk hiring in Washington. Because he is probably a 1-year guy. He's in LA for probably a season. If that offense gets better and they play well, he's getting a head job. Even if he's mediocre, he might get a head job in the next coaching hire cycle. So, like, by hiring the young guy who doesn't have enough experience and he has the opportunity to grow, you give yourself the option of having this guy for hopefully a couple seasons. And if in 2-3 years we're talking about him leaving because this offense is just that damn good, then we probably had a couple pretty damn good seasons. But those good seasons in Washington have been too far and too few between for the last, whatever you want to call it, 30 years or so, that I don't know that folks should be turning up their nose and assuming that something great's going to happen next year and all hell's going to break loose and we're going to start losing coaches and players.
My man, I had to ask. Mitch, I can't thank you enough for
you
your
didn't
time.
have to ask.
I didn't have to.
You didn't have to ask.
But it's a legitimate question I've been thinking about, because it's a very sticky one in terms of, because like you said, for Washington to have back-to-back successful seasons never happens really ever since the olden days. And so it's just like, something always goes wrong. And like the Sean McVay thing was definitely one of those where, like, the youngest head coach ever hired type thing. It was just, of course that had to happen. So that's why I was thinking about it. Like, bad things typically happen with Washington after good things. But
to me, it's a good problem to have.
That's
and to me, it's we'll cross that bridge when we get there. It's funny because, most people are talking like, oh, this guy doesn't have play calling experience. Is he going to work out? And we're skipping over all of that growth and all of that success and going immediately to a potential worst case scenario,
That's
which to
that's
me
the way
isn't a
my
worst
mind
case
works,
scenario because we
Mitch.
had a damn good year.
That's that's the
Believe
way
me,
my
I
mind
know.
works, brother. You know, I'm so optimistic. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
before you get out of here, it's like to plug your social media handle and your show, sir.
Yeah. Twitter and Instagram at Mitch_Tischler and Beltway Football. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun. Goody, great meeting you. Love the
Definitely.
questions. That was a good thinker that you gave me. Appreciate that. Mike, always good talking to you. And
Yes, sir.
Kyle, same with
Appreciate
you.
it.
Of course, Mitch. Have a good week, man.
Appreciate you, bud.
All right, man. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Mitch Tischler, Monumental Sports. Always appreciate his time. What's up, boys?
How we doing?
It's another beautiful day. It's like, no, I'm just kidding. It was very cloudy today. It's going to be rainy all week apparently, but the temperature is up. So I know Hall is happy. He hates being cold, even though he's got a heater in his warehouse. I will always bring that up.
I mean,
We
kind
got
of,
some
sort
snow
of,
up
but
here
not
today,
really.
You
which
got
I was not expecting.
you got snow
Yeah.
in Jersey? Ooh, that's another
Yep.
reason why Jersey is Jersey. You know what I mean?
The bomb diggity.
All right, boys. Let's answer some fan questions. This first one is from the Colonel Hall. Colonel says, honest answer. Do any of the coaching hires have you scratching your head? Not specifically just the offensive defensive coordinators.
No, not really. It seemed like they kept some people from the offensive staff as far as like Anthony Lynn, Brian Johnson's still on board, so there's his veteran David Blau's veteran guys that can help him out with game planning and his first time being an offensive coordinator and whatnot, play calling sequences, everything like that. Yeah, Daryl Tapp is still on the defensive side of the ball. He just got a little bit of a demotion. I guess maybe if you want to say the one head scratcher would be that Dontel. What's his name?
We got to pick on the white guy, man.
I mean, I'm just saying, like the secondary was bad last year, so everyone would just point to him and be like, "Oh, why is he still on board?" But at the same time, Durante Jones coached under his dad, and maybe he's looking at him like, "Hey, under me, he'll be a better coach." And I guess he got a demotion as well because I guess he was the defensive backs coach. Now he's just the safeties coach / defensive backs coach. And William Gay got the promotion. But yeah, just overall, I don't really see any head scratches on the staff just because a lot of these guys have connections to Durante Jones and David Blau. And a lot of the other non-connections, like a DJ Williams, seem to be good hires just based off a track record. We just got to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I know that some would say DJ Williams, just in the effect that it being Doug Williams' son, and the conflict of interest there and everything. I don't really have much to the head scratch about. Besides, I thought that they did a good job with Durante Jones. They kept it very quiet to make sure that they were the only ones really getting him in here. And given with his pedigree and background, the defense that he comes with, it makes a lot of sense. I do think the Donatel thing and William Gay thing is a little head scratching because I do have questions about why things weren't, especially the communication, fixed last season in the secondary. And both those guys were obviously there. So the big question is, was it from the top down? Now, how come the communication could not be fixed? And I know Will Harris has a lot to do with that, him being injured. He was a big communicator on that defense, but it's not like they all of a sudden became deaf overnight. Like they couldn't communicate to each other. I don't understand how that happened. But overall, with Stapleton, offensive line coach, I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. I don't have Anthony Lynn, I guess you could say, being taken away from the was it passing or running game coordinator? That's probably a little bit of the head scratcher there, given that Anthony Lynn's background, they did a pretty good job running the football last year.
They also haven't really. I don't think they've named a run game coordinator, so maybe he gets the title back when it's all said and done. But
yeah, I agree with you. And now, Goody, do you have anything for that?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's many head scratchers. I feel like it's kind of business as usual. You know, you have two, new coaches on both sides of the ball. They're gonna kind of shake up the staff, obviously. If they had, employed somebody with a track record of like a criminal background or some malicious activity, then it would be kind of, head scratching. But you really can't answer that question until after the results, right? You guys see how they perform as a unit. as a team, as a coaching staff, to really kind of put your finger on something that may be questionable. But as of now, I think it's just business as usual, filling out the roster. I mean, filling out the staff, and we'll see what these guys can do together.
I guess you could say the one big head scratcher is that they had reported that we hired the secondary coach from LSU, and then Nikki Giabala comes out with the solidified coaching staff, and his name is not on there.
Yeah, I didn't see that either.
Interesting.
So that was interesting in itself. But
I would say this too. Sorry, how many quarterback coaches in the league are the son of a Super Bowl winning quarterback? You know, like for people to feel some type of way about that, without I don't know whether they know that he was QB coach in New Orleans and also Atlanta. Like it's not just like they picked him up off the street and say, hey, you know, your dad's working with us, you should come get a job. It's the guy's got, you know, he's got time put in. So very, very strange how that was you know, kind of bothering people.
yeah, and Kim Parkhurst thank you, Kim. She's watching on Twitter. She says, love Mitch. I love Mitch T. He's so honest. Arch says Mitch is always a great guest. Kim agrees with Hall. She hates being cold too. All right, credit to you, Kim.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. Arch asks a question. He said, okay, not a typical question from me. So, Goody, would you get Ayuk on a prove-it deal or Jennings at the going rate?
Jennings from San Fran.
Yes.
This is tough because I'm not in the Ayuk like party. I'm just not there, right? I'm not there. I don't really understand it, and I wish I could, but you know that's besides the fact. The reason why it's tough is because I know that him and Jaden are, you know, they're tight, you know, so that's where it's kind of like me being a little bit like, you know, how you gonna break up the bunch? But I would take Jennings, you know, honestly, I would. I just feel like there's less noise around it. You know, showing up to play football and score touchdowns and move the ball. But the Ayuk stuff, man, it's like a ticking time bomb, and he's not even here. So imagine when he is here and then things, you know, don't go right or whatever. I'm just not ready to I'm just not ready for it. Sorry.
Yeah, for me personally, I would go with Ayuk in this sort of situation. I am frugal in a sense that it makes much more sense to retain somebody who has familiarity with the quarterback, that is coming off of a down year. It's almost like the stock market, whereas like you're getting it for low, and so it's a low risk, high reward type of situation. And this is somebody coming in that you could feel very confident with. Look, I love Jawan Jennings. He provided us one of the best videos ever of the one dude from the Raiders who called him a hoe. What do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember you talking about.
I like Jawan Jennings for that because that was hysterical. So I'll say that I want to go with Ayuk in this scenario, just based on the money, and that way you can allocate those assets in money to other areas. Given with how much players that we need, we only have 33 players under contract right now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and so we're going to need a lot with only 6 draft picks. It makes a lot more sense to be able to get the best bang for your buck. And I do think that Ayuk would be a good fit there.
So this is going to actually surprise you. I'm actually going to go with Jawan Jennings just because, and I do understand the money aspect of it, because obviously you only have a certain amount of money. You got to allocate it to other spots. And I was just looking up a spot track, and they have Jawan Jennings getting a 3-year, like $67 million contract, like $22 million a year, basically.
Whew.
Plus. So you factor in free agency, bidding war, let's put it at 24, 25-ish, say like somewhere around there. Like you said, I like Jawan Jennings' game. I love that he's a great run blocking. He's not afraid to get up in the run game.
Yeah.
Gets hella active in the run game, which obviously Dan Quinn wants the receivers, and obviously David Blau, seeing his vision of the offense, he's going to want them to be active in the run game, blocking downfield. When you look at San Francisco, you always see Jawan Jennings running downfield, making blocks, springing Christian McCaffrey and guys like that. But he's also a guy that's an intermediate of the field killer as well. And I feel like if they're going to have Terry in the stretch the field role, maybe down the field, be the explosive player, you needed Jawan Jennings to kind of complement him in the middle of the field, intermediate routes, stuff like that. And I'm looking at it from a standpoint of I'm a big, obviously, you know this. I like Brandon Ayuk. I like his game. We'll see what he
You
comes
love
back.
him. You love him.
I loved it before the injury. I like it now. We'll see what he looks like after the
I
injury.
remember when you said he was better than Terry. I know Arch does too.
Yeah, yeah. But hey, Terry proved me wrong, even though he had the same exact year he always has, minus touchdowns. But anyway, um, I'm looking at it from the aspect of okay, let's say that Brandon Ayuk does return to somewhat of the form pre-injury and like why he got the contract. Now you're looking at it like, okay, you're paying Jawan Jennings 24, 25 million, probably on a 2-year deal, maybe 3 if he plays it out. Now, if Brandon Ayuk has a big year and he gets back to form, now you gotta probably either pay him or he's gonna go off in free agency. Now you just gotta reload the room again. Instead of, okay, now we got Jawan Jennings locked in for the next couple years. He can grow with Jaden instead of and you have maybe if Terry leaves, because everyone thinks this is Terry's last year. Now you kind of got someone not to be the wide receiver one, but at least you got a consistency for Jaden going forward with a Jawan Jennings in the room still under contract. Instead of okay, Brandon Ayuk had a big year, he might have outpriced himself to stay in Washington. Now you got to reload the room again. You got to add to the room. You're taking one less weapon away for Jaden as far as like consistency and going forward. So I'm just looking for it from it as like a long term play, but yeah.
When was the last time Brandon Ayuk played football? 'Cause I can't even really remember.
2024.
2 years.
Yeah, 2024.
2 years. I mean, I
2023.
don't. It's amazing how he can carry such hype. You know, even before when he was active, I just didn't see too much. Obviously, he was a good receiver, but I just didn't see anybody that was like superstar kind of player. But then
I
again,
will
it could be
say
the offense he was in. I'm not sure,
the
but
one
there
thing he
seems
does
to be a
have,
lot of steam. Yeah.
yeah, no, the one thing he does have benefiting him as far as like the injury, and obviously we're never going to know the medicals or anything like that, but they say it takes about 2 years post
Yes.
surgery to get back to like what you originally were or to build off of that. So he's 2 years post surgery or something like that. By the time the season starts, he'll be
But he
2
hasn't
years
played.
closer.
I would
He
assume
hasn't
that.
played. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's the other catch with it. But post surgery wise, I say, okay, the knee should be fully healed if he's really doing what he's supposed to do. So now it's about you haven't played in a while. Can you get back to what you were doing before? That's really the upside play of a Brandon Ayuk. That's why I wouldn't mind a low contract, heavy incentives with a guy like that. But like I said, I'm just looking for the long term of like, okay, at least you got a guy like Jawan Jennings locked up. He can keep growing and playing with Jaden Daniels for the next couple of years instead of a Brandon Ayuk. Maybe it's just a 1-year rental again.
Yeah. And Arch agrees with me, so I'm with Kyle on this one. Team even wins if you lose Ayuk to another team after a good season. I agree with you there. I'm just with the low risk, high reward. And with Brandon Ayuk, his game has never been predicated on speed. It's much more the route running and just consistency overall as a wide receiver. So that's why you'd be more comfortable with him. In separation with like if you were to compare him with like Tank Dell, which I absolutely loved. He was my blue chip playmaker coming out of that draft. And coming into it, Houston, I absolutely nabbed him up, and they did a good job of doing so. But like if you're looking at those two, you'd say who's most likely going to be able to get back to form, and you'd put more stock into Brandon Ayuk, just given like what his game makeup is. It's not based on speed. It's the footwork, it's the route separation, and just being able to run good routes. And obviously the familiarity with the quarterback, this helps it a little bit more. Look, I'm not a champion for Brandon Ayuk. I'm just thinking of this is a smart scenario for both
You love
parties.
him.
You love. Don't push it on me, Ricky Bobby. That's all you, dude. Now the next question. This one was submitted by the Colonel. Goody, AP hit a home run with the free agency signing of Laramie Tunsil last year, but he also pooped the bed with Marshawn Lattimore. Might we see a similar swing for the fences this free agency? Max Crosby?
So the Marshawn was a trade and Laramie was free agency. So in terms of going,
Laramie was a trade too.
They were both trades.
It just
yes,
happened during
that's
free agency.
yes. I apologize. But yeah, so he definitely hit for defense. But if your batting average is 500, that's Hall of Fame, right? So he's still doing okay in my book there. But yeah, you got to take shots, right? If you're gonna miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So if you're a new GM, a young GM, you're definitely gonna put your cards. You're gonna put your hand in. You're gonna put your chips in the table and take your shots. the Marshawn situation could have worked out, right? Like, we don't know what that really could have looked like if we had a formidable defense, because let's remind ourselves here what the defense situation was, regardless of Marshawn or not. So maybe Adam Peters was on point with that as well. And what if we had Durante Jones in here on that season and he was able to take Marshawn and continue, where he was, or just help him get into a better position to kind of elongate his career? But we don't know that, and it didn't happen. It didn't work out. We do have a left tackle, though. We have our franchise quarterback, and we do have a left tackle that is top of the line. So in terms of him, kind of, I don't know, I'm not sure what the question was actually, but big swings this offseason, right? In terms of trades
Or signs of free agency.
or signs. Yeah, I think it's all systems go. What it's going to do, how they see it for themselves, is going to differ from how we may imagine it to be. But I believe it's all systems go. They're going to be stocking up, and they're going to be getting some really quality players this offseason throughout the free agency.
And we have to remember, Colonel, that we were hit completely off guard with the Laramie Tunsil trade. Nobody was hearing anything about it. Nobody knew that Laramie Tunsil was available by Houston. So take that into consideration that maybe Adam Peters is working in the shadows. And I know I talked to Mitch about trading for a player, right? But I'm under the mindset that maybe it doesn't have to be pick for player, so to speak. Like, let's just put in a scenario where Arvil Reese, David Bailey, Ruben Bain are all gone when you get to pick 7. And the Jaguars are looking to jump up to get Jeremiah Love, right, so to speak. If they offer you Brian Thomas Jr., do you say no to that just to go back a pretty good amount, right? Like that is a pretty good value for somebody that played with Jaden Daniels, and you have to think about. So maybe that's something that's down the pipeline for Washington, and with Adam Peters is being able to make something happen. That's always the elk that could happen as well. I don't think with Max Crosby, I don't think that's the case. I think Las Vegas is doing a good job of trying to make sure that Max Crosby is happy. As much as I would love to be able to see Mad Max here, I don't think it's going to be a possibility. But in terms of free agency, like how surprising can it get? I do think that we're going to get some pieces in here right away to make Durante Jones happy from a startup position, and then we'll let the draft hammer it out from there.
Yeah, no, I agree. As far as I'll start with the Max Crosby thing. Do I think that they would trade for Max Crosby? No, but would I be surprised if they gave up this year's 7th pick to get a Max Crosby who you can come in, obviously energize. He will be the focal point of the defense. You know what you're getting in him as far as like play wise, play style wise, competitiveness, all that stuff, how he is in the locker room, and you don't really know what you're getting as far as the 7th overall pick, and that's the unknown. But obviously, the 7th overall pick would be younger. You got better control over that player, all that stuff that comes with it. But so I don't think that Max Crosby is on the board just because we don't even have enough picks right now early on to even put that into motion, and they'd be giving up future picks, and it's just all about like still trying to get younger and build through the draft, and you can't still be giving up future picks for, even though he's still 28, he's entering his prime right now. It just doesn't really fit the timeline of trying to build a young core around Jaden going forward.
Trey Hendrickson makes much more sense than Max Crosby, if we're being honest.
Yeah, a short 2-3 year deal, something like that for an older guy, come in, help right away type thing. But yeah, to your point, I was just looking at all the stuff around Brian Thomas Jr. and he could be had for the right price, maybe possibly. So that kind of piqued my interest of like, okay, he's a 1st round pick. He's not going to get a 1st rounder back for him. Maybe they probably want a 2nd, but would they take an early 3rd, which is basically a later 2nd for a team that would, like a Buffalo or somebody like that, would probably be interested in him. So
I'm using it much more like for them to move up in the drafts in the 1st round.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I'm just talking about like another scenario. Like, okay, hey, you get a 3rd round. If you planned on maybe, okay, let's address the receiver in the 3rd round. Brian Thomas Jr. is probably going to be better than the 3rd round guy that you're going to get.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. So maybe they dangle that 3rd rounder like, hey, you get an early 3rd round pick for Jacksonville, which is basically like a late 2nd rounder because we picked number 7 overall in the 3rd round. And you get Brian Thomas Jr. in here. he's going into his third year, and you still have control over him. He already knows Jaden Daniels, and now you got that deep threat down the field. Jaden Daniels, when he was at his best, 2 wide receivers on the outside that can challenge you vertically. So I think that would be good for the offense. But
I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of that.
I would be happy with that. But yeah, just overall, I do think free agency wise, I'll just say that we're gonna get probably hopefully legit like playmaker for Jaden on the offensive side of the ball, and I do think they'll probably get 2 solid big splashes on the defensive side of the ball to kind of lay that foundation for Durante Jones going forward.
Now, rapid fire with these last couple questions here. This one from our boy Ken Johansson. Good to hear from you, Ken. He said Washington will have plenty of cap space next month, Goody, and could have more with the right strategy. Which solution is better with this player? Release Daron Payne and gain a lot of cap space, but have a sizable dead cap hit, or sign Payne to a new 3-year contract with 2 void years and gain plenty of cap space as well, or simply keep Payne and his current contract. What would you be choosing? Rapid fire.
Give me the pain. Give me the pain. Everybody's trying to get rid of the pain. We want to keep Payne in town. So either of the last 2 options. However, we're keeping him in town, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think the second option of signing Payne to a new 3-year contract with 2 void years and gaining plenty of cap space is probably the best case scenario, given that you have Jaden Daniels' contract. You cannot lose sight of that after year 5, right? We got to keep that in the back of our mind. If Jaden Daniels continues to progress, that's going to be a thing. So making sure you have the cap space allocated enough to be able to get him to his massive contract that we're projecting he's going to get, you got to be in a good position to do that. I think that contract extension would put you there.
Yeah, I was gonna say go with the option C, which is just let him play it out. But the 28 million towards the cap is which I saw someone post say it's only really like 10% of the cap going like projected that we have. So it's like it's not really a big chunk of the cap looking at it like from that perspective. But if you can re-sign him to a 3-year deal with the 2 void years, loaded up like heavy, like front loaded to where you kind of have like an out maybe after year 1 or 2, and you can get out of the deal when he turns 30 or something like that, then I would probably go with that option just to open up a little bit more space as well.
Yep. Now, this next question, this one is from our boy Tony Franchise on Twitter. Thank you, Tony. What running back should we target in free agency to match with Bill Hall?
I like Breece Hall. I liked him coming out of college from Ohio or Iowa State. He has the last name Hall, so he's going to be a beast regardless. But yeah, I like Breece Hall.
Liar. For me, I think it's Javonte Williams from Dallas. I think Javonte Williams has really starting to hit his stride and going.
He ain't leaving.
I think J.K. Dobbins is another one to consider. Look, Dallas is in a bad spot with their cap, dude. And especially they have to re-sign George Pickens. I'm not sure they're going to be able to mortgage everything that they want to be able to do. So I would say Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins is another one out there possibly. But ultimately, Chris Rodriguez, I think he earned a spot to come back. He really proved to be fruitful. Goody, are you still there?
Oh, yes, sir. I didn't realize I was off cam.
What would you say for running back in free agency?
Yeah, I was actually going to say Chris Rodriguez as well, but I do like Rashad White. If I was to be a little bit more, if I were to look at it in a splashy way, I would go with the Breece Hall route. I think that would be interesting to see. His career has been there, a Jet his whole career. Just to see what it looked like in a different setting would be pretty unique.
I would not be mad with Rashad White, given with what happened with Tampa Bay. I do think that he is serviceable, to say the least. Last question from Twitter. Hall from Commandee's Nuts. Can Caleb Downs be the green dot as a safety? If Bobby Wagner isn't our starting middle linebacker, who would be the green dot?
Yeah, I think it would be McGee, just because I think he's been following behind Bobby, kind of prepping for this moment. But if it came down to it and they wanted to give it to Caleb Downs just because they have more faith in him, just getting the guys lined up and all that type of stuff, then I could definitely see that happening. He seems like a really smart guy that can kind of be the middle linebacker of the defense from the safety position. So, yeah, I could definitely see both of them, but I think it would be McGee just to probably start the season. If it obviously didn't work out or didn't work out in training camp, then I can see them pivot to Caleb Downs. But I think they're going to give it to McGee.
I'd be willing to say Frankie Louvu could be somebody that could wear the green dot if needed to. I do think they've been priming and prepping Jordan McGee to take over as the green dot. With Caleb Downs, it being a much more sophisticated kind of multi-front defense that we expect Durante Jones to implement, will Caleb Downs have that grasp fully as soon as he walks on? I'm not sure you could get that in one offseason. Maybe in the future, 100% I believe that he can. But that's a lot to put on a young man coming into the NFL. Look, Caleb Downs is very smart, very good at football. Do I think he's like not capable of being able to master it in one offseason? No, but in the same breath, I don't want to put that on him. I want him to be able to come in and do what he does and not have to put all of that on his shoulders right away. And that's why coaches a lot like veteran players, because they kind of have a grasp of things. So I would say Frankie Louvu out of anybody. What do you think, Jordan?
I gotta say Jordan McGee. He's been, like you said, he's been basically groomed for this position. He did have the injuries that set him back. He would be probably further up to speed than he is today, but seems to be still ascending. So the only thing with that being said is we do know that he does have an injury history, right? So who would be that second person in line? That's really where I'm more concerned. And I personally don't see Frankie Louvu being that person necessarily. But that would be the bigger question mark for me, is like who would be backing up that green dot if it's not McGee. That's where I would kind of be resting to find out.
One of the things I took away from Mike McDonald in Seattle, that he said that their defenders, they'll have a play called like somebody's blitzing, and he lets the players dictate who's blitzing and who's not. When they get out in that huddle and they see the offense, that's when they decide who's going and who's not. I think Frankie would be perfect for that. Given with what you're seeing on the field, this is where you're supposed to go. And so maybe you'd be splitting that half up a little bit, because you're basically saying secondary talk to each other, linebacker, front seven, you guys dictate what's going on there. And I think that's probably a good way to go about it. I'm not poo-pooing Caleb Downs whatsoever, but I do think that Durante Jones talking up Frankie Louvu is not nothing. I do think that he has a lot of respect for Frankie and what Frankie can do, and I think that's probably where his mindset is coming from. Ultimately, I don't think Jordan McGee's not capable, but just speaking from a veteran aspect, I think that that's what coaches really like. Now, the last question we have from Twitter is from Arch. Which free agency running back complements Bill the best? Hall?
I gotta look at the full list, but off the top of my head, I'm trying to think. Honestly, it would probably be a guy like Travis Etienne, who can run the ball out the backfield, catch the ball out the backfield. He can be the 3-down back, but also you got a guy like Bill who can come in. He's shifty, he's twitchy, he has the vision for the cutbacks, and he's a little bit more of a pounder and a bruiser than what Etienne can bring to the table. So it would be he'd still be the change of pace guy, but he'd be like kind of the bruiser to Travis Etienne's kind of shifty, speedy, catch the ball at the backfield, 3-down back kind of player.
I still think it's Javonte Williams. To be perfectly honest with you, Javonte Williams has shown well in his own kind of scheme, stretch run plays, and thumper. Probably the best prospect I have ever evaluated as a pass blocker. I talk about this all the time at North Carolina. I watched him literally decapitate a guy. I thought the guy died on the field. It was crazy from a running back to do that to a linebacker. I was blown away by it. And that's somebody you could bring in, because that's the one thing Bill, to compliment Bill, because the one thing that Cliff talked about with Bill was pass protection, right? Well, Javonte Williams, you don't really have to worry about that. And so you could bring him in to be able to do well in that regard. Chris Rodriguez, if you want to re-sign him, to be able to good pass protector, thumper, running of the football. And Javonte Williams is no slouch catching the ball in the backfield either, if I'm not mistaken. So I think for me personally, I do think it is Javonte Williams.
I would have to say Kenneth Walker. He's a
Low-hanging
all-around
fruit,
back.
man.
Yeah,
He's not leaving Seattle, bro.
You never know. You never know,
Yeah.
right? He's a free agent.
If Charbonnet never would have tore his ACL, I could probably see him them just moving on and keeping Charbonnet to be the next guy, but I think he'll be back now.
Yeah.
But if not Kenneth Walker, then I would still go with Breece Hall. He's got a lot of youth. He's got a lot of experience. He wouldn't need to be, workhorse necessarily as he has been on the Jets. So that could free up his body, get him a little bit more juice throughout the game, each week. But I think that would complement very well Breece Hall and Bill Crosby Merritt.
My man. I like it, boys. That should wrap us up for this episode. I think that we had gotten through all of the questions that were submitted. Nothing in the Discord. Y'all let me down. I know Arch was asking ones in here, so I don't blame you for that one, Arch. Thank you. I appreciate you for being here. Thank you to Kim for contributing as well. Appreciate all you guys. If you made it this far, you're a frickin' champion. Can't thank you enough. Sorry that the title of today's episode is not correct. I forgot to update the stream key, so my mistake. But we'll see you guys again either late this week or early next week. Keep an eye out for Red Zone in the Lab. We have the Commanders Draft Show every Sunday at 8:35. Make sure you check that out. This week we are highlighting in the draft running backs and tight ends, and I'm very excited to be able to start diving deep into those prospects. But we'll see you guys then.
Whoa.
Thank you to Kim. Thank you to Arch, Tony Franchise, Mike, the Colonel. Thank you to Ken Johansson. I appreciate you guys for everything that you do. We love you guys. God bless you. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
Goody.
And we'll see you guys next time. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.